And we usually bring the tractor in the shop sometime in December, take it apart, look at things, and determine what we need to do to get it ready for the next year. We're having some bearing issues, some main bearing problems, so that's one of our biggest problems with this engine.
Wayne Longnecker is a farmer in Cambridge and a modified tractor pull competitor who participates in more than 30 competitions a year, including the Iowa State Fair. It's a competition to see whose 5,000-plus horsepowered vehicle can pull a so-called weight transfer sled the furthest down a clay track. There's increased resistance from the sled the further it's pulled. With the pulling season beginning in June, Longnecker wants to be sure his modified tractor engine is up to the task.
But you have to have something competitive. You choose an engine and a combination, tire combination, frame combination that's going to give you a chance to win.
His choice of power is a Rolls-Royce V12 World War II vintage airplane engine. Purchased from a government surplus auction in England for $3,000, this is an engine he's used since 2001, after more than a few modifications.
I'm sure they would cringe if they knew what we were doing with them. So yeah, it wasn't designed to do what we're doing. When we first changed over to methanol, the system we used didn't work very well, and we blew up a lot of superchargers and a lot of other parts, and we finally determined what we were doing wrong. And a lot of things that I've learned have been trial and error.
There have been years of trial and error during efforts to repurpose the Rolls-Royce engine.
This is just the fuel system. Basically, these are just small manifolds. These are the fuel lines, and that's all basically all homemade stuff. So that replaces the carburetor, the gasoline system. These magnetos are off of a V8 Chevrolet engine. It's a 5-disc clutch made by Crowder that most of the pullers run. And you can see the lower end of the engine. This is where we have most of the troubles, and cranking rods is where most of the trouble with these engines, or any engines, happens. Just like any other engine. So it's just a little bigger pistons, and everything's just a little bigger and heavier.
The engine goes into his tractor called River Rat, named after his sometimes intrusive neighbor, the Skunk River. Hence the dike he built around his home and outbuildings. Over the years, the frames and engines have changed, but Longnecker's passion for the sport has not. It dates back nearly 40 years.
I always had a modified tractor. We started out with like a 265 Chevy V8 that I bought a car from my uncle and put that in an F20 farmall tractor, and that was our first modified tractor. And we stepped up from there and just kept moving forward to try to improve and do better.
There's lots of talk about the engine, but it takes more than that to win trophies.
For us, the front weight is pretty important, how we balance the tractor. The air pressure is important, and the gear, what gear. We have 2 different gear choices. The tires are pretty important because that's what puts power to the ground. They actually made a special tire. These are those special tires. We still modify them. They remove about 3/4 of an inch of rubber from the outside of the tire and make the tire a little rounder, just like it was originally. That way they don't throw quite so much dirt.
And don't forget the driver.
And then it's up to the puller to look at the track conditions and determine what he needs to do on each particular track to try to do the best he can on that particular track for that event. We got the horsepower, we like to be able to use it. And I think the crowd enjoys a track that you can put power to it and let the motor really go, and they can hear the sound of the engine more.
All these things, Longnecker says, help make for a good run on the track and a great show for the crowds that pack places like the grandstand at the Iowa State Fair.
Everybody always asks me every year, "You going to the State Fair?" I said, "Well, if I'm not broke down, I'll be there."
See how Wayne Longnecker makes out at this year's State Fair Modified Tractor Competition by continuing to watch Iowa Public Television's coverage of fair highlights.